All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the South Burlington Democratic Primary Forum for the Chittenden Southeast State Senate District. My name is Matthew Vigno. I am the Vice Chair of the Democratic Committee here in South Burlington. I will be moderating this evening's forum, and joining me at the table as our timekeeper is Representative Emily Krasnow, also of South Burlington. We have with us on the table Joanna Grossman, Thomas Chittenden, Elizabeth Hunt, Keisha Ram-Hinsdale joining remotely, and hopefully Ginny Lyons joining us soon as well. I'll begin with a quick rundown of the rules, then we'll jump into things. Oh. Yes, please silence your cell phones. And then I'll do a quick run through of the rules and we'll get started. So speaking order will be determined by seating order. We've got that. Candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement at the beginning of the forum, 1 minute and 30 seconds for a closing statement at the end of the forum. You'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. When you have 15 seconds remaining, candidates, Representative Krasnow will show you the yellow card. When your time is up, she will show you the red card. And once she shows you the red card, I will allow you to finish whatever sentence you're finishing, and then I will cut you off so that we can move along to the next answer. Questions will be posed by you, the lovely members of the audience, or in the event that no audience questions are forthcoming from a list that I have up here. Audience members, if you have a question, please come up to the podium here. You'll press the button at the base of the microphone and wait for the green light to turn on. I'll ask you to give your name, your town of residence, and then very briefly state your question. We want to hear as much from the candidates as possible, so please keep your questions succinct. And please direct your questions to all candidates so that all candidates can answer. Candidates, please use your allotted time to answer the question as posed by the audience member or by me. If you go off on a tangent, I may politely remind you to answer the question at hand. If you need me to repeat a question, since there are 4, possibly 5 of you, happy to do that. Owing to time constraints, we're not going to do any rebuttals, lightning rounds, crossfires, anything like that. And I think we can all agree to the rules, so let's begin. And Joanna, we'll start with you. 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew and South Burlington Dems, for doing this. So my name is Joanna, and like everyone else up here, I'm running for Chittenden Southeast District State Senate. My first job here in Vermont was for the Rubenstein School of Natural Resources, where I used to support environmental scientists across the state and help them with their data management. And it was an amazing position. And every month I got to hike up Mount Mansfield and clean out the rain gauges. It was just a sort of quirk of the job. And I actually did that again yesterday, not the rain gauges part, just hiking up Mount Mansfield. And I was just reminded again of how extraordinary the state is. I love Vermont so much. It's so amazing how we've protected our environment, how we protect each other. We have reproductive rights and shield laws, gender affirming care. Hey, Jenny. We make sure that, we don't allow our neighbors to be detained by ICE, but all these amazing rights and protections that we fought so hard for are no good for our kids if they can't afford to stay here. And right now, they can't. I can tell you, I've knocked on over 2,500 doors in our district, and I have talked to so many families who are struggling to pay for housing and healthcare and life in Vermont. The status quo in Vermont just isn't cutting it for working families here, and I think we deserve better, and that's why I'm running.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Senator Lyons, will go next to you. 2 minutes for an opening statement. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Terrific. Thank you. How's that? Thank you. Thanks for your patience. So I am Senator Ginny Lyons. I currently chair the Senate Health and Welfare Committee. I also sit on the Appropriations Committee, among others, and have been doing it for quite a while. But beyond that, because of that, I bring a significant experience into the Senate. I'm someone who listens and collaborates and stays grounded in the daily realities people face. Whether it's healthcare costs, education, public health, housing, or supporting older Vermonters and working families, my focus remains on building a stronger, more affordable Vermont where people can thrive. I was lead sponsor and helped pass the Reproductive Liberty Constitutional Amendment. And on November 11th, we'll see another constitutional amendment that I wrote and introduced on integrated equal rights. I think it's really critically important that our Constitution reflect our values, and I think that those two amendments help to do that. Recently healthcare has been in the news, and I am very proud that I've taken leadership in the healthcare arena. In 2022, we passed a comprehensive bill along with others in 2023, 24, and then more recently last year and this year to begin to look at how we can improve our healthcare system overall. One of the things that we did do last year that I am extremely proud of was the Medicare Savings Program to help folks at income levels who are on Medicare, to help them increase their ability to afford supplemental care. I think my time is up.
Yes,
Well,
thank you
so
very
thank
much.
you all, and I'm really happy to be here.
Very good. We'll move next to Thomas Chittenden.
Hello, everybody. My name's Thomas Chittenden. I'm really proud to be hosting or to be at this hosted event here in South Burlington. And thanks definitely go to Matthew, Chris, and Representative Krasnow for this. But I also want to recognize that in the room, there are former and current city councilors, planning commission members, people that have served many committees in South Burlington. And as I was walking down the street, I love seeing Judy's, Folino's, and a city center has made it when we get a Lunig's Bistro. I am really excited about Lunig's. And that in the City Hall, City Walk Park, it was at the opening just 2 days ago, I think it was. That is remarkable. Anybody watching this that hasn't come down to downtown South Burlington, you need to come see it. Come stop by the mall and check out the City Walk and check out Folino's and Judy's. It's just quite phenomenal. Now that I've used half my time on my intro pumping or boosting up South Burlington, I'll say I'm running for this time for re-election for the same reasons I ran 6 years ago. I'm running because I want to see more opportunities for current and future generations of Vermonters to be able to stay here, live here, work here, and thrive here. I apply that lens in just about everything I serve on. When I served on Green Mountain Transit, on the City Council, when I've served in the University of Vermont Faculty Senate, and in the State Senate, I just want to see more opportunities and make it easier to build homes and businesses in the great state of Vermont. So I apply that lens in just about everything I do and everything I work for. I'm seeking re-election because I think I'm getting better at this and not worse, I hope. But that's for you all to judge on the election day. And I do want to build on the momentum of important programs that we passed. The CHIP program, Community Housing Investment Program, CPACE program. I want to continue the conversations around education transformation. There's a lot more to be done. And I feel like after 4 years on Senate Finance, I now finally understand the education financing system in the great state of Vermont. And I think we can make it better through continued perseverance and conversation. So glad to talk with anybody. Please feel free to reach out. I'm watching for that red piece of paper to fill the time, but thomas.chittenden@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Very good. Thank you. Elizabeth Hunt.
Good evening. Thanks for being here. I'm really psyched for your questions. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Ann Hunt, and I'm a first-timer. I live in Charlotte with my family, including 3 boys in public school. I work here in South Burlington, which is my second home, down the road at Timberlane Pediatrics. That's where I was all day. And I've been working in the child health and well-being community for over 20 years here in Chittenden County. And that's why I'm here, because I work with all sorts of families, young people from all walks of life, different political beliefs, different countries of origin, different economic situations. I listen to them, and I am in a profession where time, results, critical thinking, and listening all matter equally. And I'm pretty darn good at getting there in a timely fashion so that we can move forward together. And all of these wonderful people who I've been getting to know, like my own family, for years, including working in the juvenile justice system at the medical center and volunteering in the community, they're all pretty much like me, ready for some change, ready for some expertise, a new perspective, and critical, technical experience and knowledge to put towards the area that connects us all and is affecting our pocketbooks, our planning at the family level, our decisions about where we live. That's healthcare. And I'm all in on working on access and affordability in tandem, building on the strengths we have, looking at innovations that are just now kindling, and clearing up the muck of some of the attempts, failures, and distractions and over bureaucracies that we have created in Vermont. We need a clear path to results, and that's what I hope to do. Huntforvermont.com. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And now Keisha Ram Hinsdale.
Thank you so much, Matthew and Emily. Thank you for allowing me to participate remotely. I hope it's not too much of a distraction, and I don't know if this is being filmed for Town Meeting TV or okay, great, because my face is mostly cut off in the screen, which is seeing all of you. So I don't know if that's what's going to show up on Town Meeting TV, but I will leave it there. I am sorry not to be with you all in person. It's nice to know there are illustrious South Burlingtonians in the room. Apologies, I can't see you. I'm actually in the great state of Montana right now, and I mention that because I would normally not take time away from campaign season in Vermont or summer in Vermont in general. But I'm here for the Senate President's Forum. Now, I am not the Senate President, I'm the Senate Majority Leader, but it is really valuable to have all 50 states' Senates represented by sending someone. And so I have been designated by our Senate President. And the reason I wanted to come, even though, you know, I don't have to go to Montana to represent our Senate, is because for the first time in the organization, the Senate President's Forum 30-year history, they are hosting their next meeting in October in Burlington. So the Senate President's Forum and all 50 Senate presidents, hopefully, will be coming to Vermont, for some of them for the first time. And I wanted to make sure I could be that welcoming bridge to them for October. But really, in the 2 days before that, I am with my toddlers in Yellowstone, and I'm reminding them wherever we go that you know, you can't throw that rock in that geyser, or you can't pick up that branch, because if everybody did that, then things wouldn't look the same in our parks. And I think Vermonters just really understand our shared commitment to each other. And it's just really a privilege to think about all of that in our nation's 250th anniversary and right here in the first national park in the world.
Thank you, Keisha. We'll open it up for questions now. Like I was saying at the beginning, if you have a question, please come up to the podium. Go ahead, Linda. Yes, and each candidate will have a minute 30 to respond. Yes.
Hi, I hit the right button. All of you folks have talked about affordability, health care, schooling funding, different things that you want to improve. Even though it might not be something that you think you can actually get done, what's one idea that you have to actually do the change? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We'll hear first from Ginny on this one.
Can you articulate one idea to offer on, I didn't hear your last phrase.
I'm sorry. To offer that you would think would help in whatever is your main area of concern. You all have talked about different areas of expertise or concern. So one thing that's not done right now that you would have your own idea for.
Something new and different.
Exactly.
That's a challenging question. So what would I do that would be new and different? I think I've started it with looking at primary care and providing primary care across the state in an equitable way. So right now, what's happening in our state is that primary care providers, physicians, and others are leaving because they don't have the patient base and the financing to stay where they are. And that actually does include concerns about us here in Chittenden County. Chittenden County has a pretty robust primary care environment. But as soon as you step into other parts of the state, it's non-existent. So my interest is trying to learn and take lessons from what we have here in Chittenden County and carry that to the rest of the state. I know that when we are in the State House, one of the things that happens to us is people say, oh, you're from Chittenden County. And it really is very upsetting to hear that. At the same time, we do many things in this county that can contribute to expanding and helping folks in other geographic parts of the state. So I'm going to continue work on primary care and how to pay for it and how to ensure that when people need care, they get it. We have a lot of ideas for that, including mobile medical units and traveling from clinics to homes and other ways. So the payment piece is the challenge, and we're working on that now.
And thank you, Senator. I'm going to have to cut you off there. Let's go to Thomas Chittenden next.
I also want to recognize, as I've done a few of these forums, going first is the hardest. When you go second, third, or fourth, you get to think about your answer. So excellent job, Senator Lyons. But I'll say this, so I had a little more time to think about it. One thing that comes to mind that we need to do in state government, both from a regulatory sense and also from an integration sense, is leveraging the advancements of artificial intelligence. It can do a lot as a co-intelligence to help us guide through permitting processes, to work through very comprehensive documents. There are ways to streamline and utilize it to reduce bureaucracy. To reduce bureaucratic processes. So there's a lot of different efforts both in the private sector and the public sector. I've read many articles about how municipalities have been using AI to sift through massive amounts of documentation. So that's something that I think has opportunities for us to create some efficiencies in state government so that not necessarily we spend more, but what we spend money on, we get more outcome from it so that we can get more with our dollars. I think what we could also do is continue on the path that this past legislature set in motion with the cooperative education service areas. Really excited about that opportunity. It's a model that's been done in many other states. And so just last night, the South Burlington School Board was working on appointing. They're likely to appoint the superintendent who has experience from Ohio, his previous post, in that exact area to find efficiencies in school governance for the back office services, HR, payroll, transportation, special education. So CISAs are going to move a lot forward in that front. I'm excited about that. And eliminating permit redundancies. And that's a topic that we need to continue to focus on. There are duplicate layers of purpose of my red card's up, so I'll stop right there. Happy to elaborate in the next question.
Thank you. And we'll move to Elizabeth.
I love questions like that. Thank you. I'm a big systems thinker because I work with families and communities. And right now, with our population going down under 700,000, aging, we have to create innovations and ideas that affect different aspects of human life and keep us strong and protect our planet. So I'm going to talk about something I've been thinking about for a really long time. And I see our student population going down in the public school area. And I see some achievements like Act 166, Let's Grow Kids for young people. So we all know that when you invest in young people, specifically 3 to 5-year-olds, which is something Obama worked heavily on, you help them understand how to build confidence, how to become social, how to develop skills, and also how to be in a structured environment where learning is king. And universal pre-K is that. We could put universal pre-K kids into that pool, keep the funding static, and shift some of the Act 166 and private childcare resources to use our schools, which are big and have less humans in them now, to really welcome those children. Also, our high school students and our tech ed students who are interested in early childhood education could have great exposure, learning, and inspiration through that innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Keisha, we'll move to you.
Thank you. I have spent a majority of my time as a House member for 8 years and then my 6 years in the Senate focused on demographics and affordability. It didn't hurt that I started when I was 22. So spent a lot of time thinking, how do we keep young people here and not just pay lip service? Many know that I spent my last 3 years on 3 landmark housing bills because it became obvious to most in the state that our housing crisis was one of the foundational elements we would need to address to be able to attract and retain more Vermonters here. And in this current session, I've turned my attention to something that I think is even more foundational, because it's about making sure the Vermonters who are here feel they have a purpose and a place, and that's career technical education. And I've been very grateful to hear Seamus Abshir, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, I probably am, speak to our Senate Education Committee about the value and importance of career technical education. We treat it like an afterthought, but about 60% of our kids could start in a fulfilling career with career technical education without the need for a 2 or 4 year degree. And they could be a journeyman in a trade or an LNA by the time they graduate high school, which could start their earning potential at a much higher place for their future, and build the housing and the healthcare systems that we need. So it's a win-win, and I plan to continue to work on that.
Thank you very much, Joanna.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. So you may not be aware that a third of the state budget is federally funded. And you won't be surprised to learn that federal funds are starting to dry up here in Vermont. Actually, half of Vermont's nonprofits are federally funded, and nonprofits are a huge employer here in Vermont. I work for Phoenix Books, which you guys, if you're readers, you may be familiar with. So I work for a local business here in Vermont, and actually part of my role at Phoenix is to advocate for local businesses. And as we start to lose federal funds, it's more important now than ever that we support our local businesses and shore up our local economy, because if we don't do that, we can't continue to pay for the things that make Vermont amazing, right? Our roads and our schools and our programs and, you know, our state employees and all these things. So we really need to be shoring up Vermont. And part of the way we can do that is legislating to support our local businesses. So you asked for an idea. So I'm going to give you one really specific thing that I was really sorry didn't move through in this last session, and I would love to see move through in this session. And that is limiting swipe fees. So when you go to a retailer, to a store, and you swipe your credit card, the retailer actually has to pay a fee to a credit card duopoly. It's heavily controlled. And I know, just for an example, just for little Phoenix Books, that would save us over $100,000 a year. So, you know, multiply that by all our little retailers all over Vermont and think about how much money we could start keeping here in Vermont when you spend $1 here in Vermont, as opposed to, you know, to some online out of state corporation. The money stays here. It pays for our staff and our employees and all the good things that make Vermont, Vermont.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Okay, and another question from the audience. Oh, come on up and please introduce yourself with your name and your town of residence. I might know you, but the candidates might not.
Lewis Myers, Shelburne. Last week, the United States Supreme Court ruled that states can make their own decisions regarding transgender girls and women participating in female sports. Vermont already allows that. Interestingly, national polls, including in blue states and among many liberal voters, the majority of people polled have real concerns about this for both fairness and safety. The overwhelmingly majority of women athletes and high school female athletes oppose transgender participation right now in female sports. So I'd like to just hear briefly how each of you feels about this issue. Thanks.
Great. We'll start with Tom on this one.
I, for one, fully support Proposal 4, which does speak much to this. So that will be before the voters this coming November. It is a equal protection of law amendment, and it successfully cleared both legislative sessions. That's the way constitutional amendments work in Vermont. One biennium, you have to have the vote, and then have to have the continued vote the second session. This amendment will explicitly enshrine protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression directly into the Vermont Constitution. So to answer your question, our Vermont Constitution, because of federal supremacy, can sometimes be overruled by what the federal government enacts in statutes and the interpretations. But I think it's important for us to assert our values, and I am very proud that that's going to be before the voters this coming fall. I don't know if that directly answers your questions, but I know Senator Lyons has been a leader on existing shield laws, Act 89 and Act 20. Vermont has some of the strongest interstate shield laws in the nation. These laws strictly prohibit Vermont state agencies, local police, and public employees from cooperating with out-of-state federal investigations seeking to criminalize or impose civil liability for gender-affirming health care. I don't know if that directly answers your question, Dr. Myers. I hope it does. Okay. So I want kids to be kids, and if they want to play in sports, they should be able to play in sports.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth.
That was a real hardball. Thanks for that question. It's something I know a lot about. So I take care of all children and young adults, including transgender, through social, medical, surgical transitions, and know a lot about the physiology of the human body before puberty and after puberty. And so I'm also a former D1 college athlete and very competitive person. I love sports, even if it's frisbee in the backyard. So if you are biologically born male and you transition to be female, transgender female, as a post-pubertal adult, you have a lot of the muscular and cardiovascular strength of a male counterpart. And so I so wish we had a category somewhere in the middle, honestly, because some marathons do that. They have non-binary races. And so I think it's very specific to the timing and the physiology. So I am not for any restrictions, Lewis. I think that's a terrible idea. We need to move our bodies. We need to be in nature. But I think the pre-pubertal timing should be the post-transitional sex match, if that makes sense. I would put that into writing for sure, yeah.
And we'll move next to Keisha.
Thank you. And I want to highlight that I believe it was last year of this biennium, the Senate passed a resolution affirming the care for transgender youth and their families, and their healthcare access and their general rights on a 30-0 vote. So not only do we live in a state where I hope we don't have to debate the fundamental rights and the well-being of our trans youth, but that I hope does not become a partisan issue in the future here. You know, really, I have two toddlers. I just hope they have every opportunity to feel safe and healthy in their bodies and to enjoy sports as something that is collegial and about teamwork and not about who wins. And politics should stay entirely out of that discussion.
All right, Joanna, you're up next.
Thanks for this question, Lewis. Vermont is our refuge and we need to protect it, right? It's so important now more than ever with everything going on in DC. We need to make sure that we're continuing to protect Vermont and allow it to be a refuge. This issue is really close to my heart. I have a trans teenager. The last time I was in this auditorium, they were Issa and now they're Spencer. And I mean, I just feel emphatically that we need to be supporting our youth. This is an issue of mental health as well as education, as well as sports. It's important to be supporting our kids and making sure that they can survive and thrive. And yeah, absolutely. I think they should be able to participate. I just feel like it's so important. This is, this all comes back to why it's so important to be shoring up Vermont and making sure that we can continue to pay for Vermont and to not be reliant on a federal administration that is coming after our youth, coming after our residents, coming after the Vermont way of life.
And Ginny.
Thank you. And I'd like to echo the comments that Dr. Hunt made regarding pre-pubertal transitioning. There's a big difference in when folks transition their gender and their sexual attributes. It's really important that we stick to common sense. And one of the things that, as a biologist myself and someone who has taught in the area of physiology and immunology and endocrinology, all of these things make sense to me, but they don't make sense to the public. And what the public sees are people who have become male or female competing against one another. And so it does take us a little bit of understanding about when folks transition, how they transition, and then an understanding on the part of our schools, when kids want to compete, because it is important that kids have an opportunity to participate in athletic endeavors. And that it does carry through into adulthood. When we see adults transitioning, we also face problems in our communities. And I have heard from some of our local folks who have exercise organizations, and they're concerned about how this all takes place. So it's a big dialogue, it's a community dialogue, but I think sticking with biological knowledge, medical knowledge, and common sense does make sense.
Thank you very much. Megan, you were next. Come on up.
You. So Megan Emery, South Burlington, and I am going to ask you a question about climate change because it is the #1 question these days. We are the last generation that can address it, or else we won't. It is also what underpins our economic base, our public health. Affordable housing is an entree into social justice, but also environmental justice. Environmental justice is social justice. So all these questions about affordability, okay, you heard me. So please tell me, what have you done? What have you worked on concretely with regard to climate change legislation? And what would you like to do going into this next session? Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And we'll start with Elizabeth on this one.
That's a great question. And I feel like if I were elected, I would work on some what we call framing. So in primary care, we frame every action, decision, discussion in mental health and the mind-body connection. And I feel like making decisions for our whole population and our state need to be framed every single time on impact on our planet and our climate moving forward, even just a sentence or two of consideration. Because we're talking a lot about growth, which I support, we're talking about building more than 2,500 homes a year in Vermont based on our needs assessments. We have to do that to have the workers to install clean energy sustaining systems. And I feel very strongly about this. I drive an EV, I have solar panels, I've studied geothermal. I'm very interested in this because environmental health, climate health impacts human health, and that's my wheelhouse. I worked very closely when I was a resident up at UVM with VPIRG around Vermont Yankee. You might remember that project. Actually at a press conference with Dr. David Klaus in my front yard when I was like 8 months pregnant, when I lived on Proctor Ave, surrounding the impacts. Well, so kind of taking that physician advocate role and bringing it to what was happening on the ground in Vermont in terms of long-term impacts of Vermont Yankee. So I think I was part of that very good outcome.
Thank you very much. Keisha.
Thank you. And I think that's Megan Emery. So thanks, Megan. I think Megan knows that I have taught environmental justice at Vermont Law School for several years, and I'm in my second year teaching alongside Senator Chittenden in the Sustainable Innovation MBA program at UVM. And in the fall, I'm excited to start teaching in the Rubenstein School, where I graduated from 20 years ago. Climate change is, I think, as Megan stated, interconnected with most other issues. I do want to take a moment to say I believe the governor has set us back in not being a leader on tackling climate change. And what I mean by that is really being proactive in terms of flood resiliency, as well as our greenhouse gas inventory. Our greenhouse gas inventory in Vermont demonstrates that our two highest carbon outputs are from the transportation sector and the home heating sector. So dense, walkable housing close to where people work is our greatest climate solution, particularly for Vermont. That is what I have worked on. I would actually, agree and underscore what Dr. Hunt said. We are not meeting most of our other climate goals because we have no climate workforce. We have no climate workforce because we don't have folks in the trades who have their own place to live. So really addressing housing and career technical education is going to be our best way in Vermont of addressing climate change.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Joanna next.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking about this, Megan. Climate change is real and it's scary, and we need to take it seriously. I mentioned my teenager before. They're my inspiration for running in so many ways, and their climate anxiety is a real part of our daily life. I'm definitely the nerd who always has a reusable cup and a reusable straw, and I'm vegetarian, but that is not enough. You mentioned housing. I mean, this like false dichotomy between being able to build and be able to protect our climate is something we really need to be dealing with. Like, we can add units and do it smart, do it dense, focus on things like ADUs and high density units. And you don't have to look any further than here in South Burlington. You guys have done such an amazing job on that. Really, what I feel like is a national model. I think it's really impressive. The last I read that South Burlington added 800 units over the past 10 years, and they're all very compact, and that allows us to protect other parts of the state. So that's a really incredible work. I'd also love to see us pass the carbon registry, sorry. But one thing I really wanted to flag is that I worked on a Senate race in a red-purple district in 2024, and that's when clean heat was floating around. We were trying to pass the clean heat standard, and I learned something really hard, that if we are not focusing on people's basic needs, we can never get legislation like that through. They simply don't have the emotional capacity to support it. So that's what we need to work on.
Thank you very much, Joanna. We'll move to Ginny next.
Okay, thank you. I've had a lot of experience with this, Megan, and thank you for the question. As chair of Senate Natural Resources and Energy, I developed the first greenhouse gas reduction goals. And from there, once you have goals, then you have to figure out how do you achieve them. So doing the things that you were talking about in terms of, if you are building housing, then it ought to be insulated in such a way as not to send dollars up the chimney. When you're building housing today, we ought to be putting in heat pumps or other efficient ways of conserving energy. Building more renewable energy sources in our state is significant. Having renewable energy sources when we see new developments going up, that's not an easy thing to do, and it requires a partnership between local communities like South Burlington. I know right out the street on Dorset Street, there's on Spear Street, there's a beautiful housing development that is fully energized by solar panels. So including those kinds of programs, I think, are critically important. Beyond that, the cost of diesel and petroleum, our fuel underlies everything. So all our consumer products, the inflation we're seeing, the increased costs, that's because of fuel costs. So the more renewable energy we can put in place, the more we can reduce some of those costs. Last thing, I really want to look next session, continue to look at toxic chemicals, because some of those chemicals are all the ones we're talking about, petroleum products, that we need to eliminate from our consumption.
Great. Thank you very much, Ginny. We'll move to Thomas.
So the question, I think, was, what have we done? One thing that comes to mind this past session, I introduced a bill, S-138, and it ultimately did pass. It was attached to a different bill. It has to do with commercial property assessed clean energy. It's a financing mechanism. We already have residential PACE, but there was no uptake in it for a variety of reasons. Many other states, 32, have commercial property assessed clean energy financing. We adopted an expanded version of it to also include stormwater and resiliency mechanisms. The core fundamental aspect of what this will allow people to do is commercial developers and owners of commercial properties are able to invest in their property and have the note to spend on solar panels that might cover a parking lot, or new heat pumps, or new stormwater retention. They can have the debt that they would take out to be able to fund it be tied to the property and not to them. And so if they have short-term interests, meaning they might want to sell the property within 5 years, whoever then owns the property would continue to pay it off. It's a way to align the long-term benefit of investments in clean energy into with the short-term interest that commercial developers might have. So that's now in place, and there was a lot of excitement, and I hear there's some projects on it. It honestly is because on the campaign trail, I always talk about how I'd like to see more solar panels covering our parking lots than our farm fields. And this is a mechanism used in many other states to make that happen, because putting solar panels above parking lots costs more. You got to go higher. You got to use steel beams. You got to have cantilever structures, especially in Vermont, so you can get plow trucks underneath it. So this is a financing mechanism for it. I had some other examples, but that's the most recent one. I think CHIP, maybe if that hasn't spoken to, when I was a Green Mountain Transit chair, I did a lot with public transit, ABL, and there's more. But maybe in the next question, I'll elaborate.
Thank you very much. Another question. Come on up.
So I'm glad
Turn
Megan,
your microphone on, please, if it's not.
it's got the green light.
Oh, good. Very good.
Um,
Could you introduce yourself?
my name is Jimmy Lease, and I live in South Burlington. And I'm glad Megan brought up a global issue of global warming. I have another global issue, which is the genocide that is taking place in Gaza. And this is something the state can do something about with preferential purchasing and investment decisions. And we have one of the candidates here who's been a leader in promoting the genocide and
Sir, could you come to your question, please?
in opposing the ceasefire. And so I'd like to ask how the other candidates, how you, Joanna, and the other candidates stand on the position that Becca Balint took when she voted against further funding for Israel in 2024. And that's a position that both Bernie Sanders and Peter Welch have also taken. Thank you.
Okay. We'll begin with Keisha.
Thank you, James. I'm actually, we discovered as the Senate Democrats wrote their own statement on the Gaza genocide and a request to try and tone down our rhetoric and tone down any violent statements against both Jews and Muslims is sort of when we learned I'm the only practicing Jewish senator right now in Vermont. Fun fact. Many know that I'm a Hindu. My father left the part of India that became Pakistan. So I have a lot of experience with what happened 75 years ago in the world when a lot of borders were redrawn around people. I just submitted a statement to, to anyone who will listen that I believe the Netanyahu administration in Israel is making Jews in Israel and around the world less safe with his preemptive and violent actions in the Middle East and threatening posture around the world. So, I joined Senator Sanders, Congresswoman Balint, and others in opposing additional funding to this regime in Israel right now. I do want to emphasize, however, I've traveled to Israel, I've traveled to the West Bank. I very much believe in Israel's right to exist and its right to coexist with other nations. And I hope we can continue to bring peace to the Middle East.
Thank you, Keisha. Joanna, you are next.
I hope that none of you ever have the experience of being defamed because of your identity. Thank you. I never once have supported genocide. That's insulting and slander, and I'm deeply, deeply offended. Everything about this war has been heartbreaking for me from the day it started, and actually long before that. For over 20 years, I have been an outspoken opponent of Benjamin Netanyahu, and if there's anything I could do to save even one life in that region, in or outside of the Senate, of course I would do it. That's all.
Thank you. We'll move to Jenny next.
Thank you. I left my green light on. Of course, I oppose genocide, and I supported the resolution that we passed in the Senate, and I would probably stand with Bernie and Becca, were I also in Congress. So, for me, this is a moral question that we can all stand together on. I did write Prop 4, and which is equal rights regardless of what your background is, your ethnicity. And so it's a non-question for me. We cannot allow for genocide to exist regardless of where or by whom.
Tom.
This is a tough question. The war has left an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. Estimates from international and local health organizations place the Palestinian death toll at upwards of 70,000. Roughly 90% of the 2.1 million Gazan residents remain displaced. 70% lack dignified housing, and an estimated $71.4 billion is needed for long-term reconstruction. I'm a Vermont state senator. I am not diving into this topic, hearing from the experts that understand the issue at the levels that need to be made. I trust and voted for Becca Balint, Bernie Sanders, and Peter Welch. I support the actions and the votes that they took because I trust them enough, because I've met them, and I think they are doing their best. These are tough questions. If we all agreed on things, we wouldn't need politicians, and I'm sure they struggled with those votes, and they're trying to do the right thing, and everybody wants peace in the Middle East. So to answer your question, I would have voted the same way as the 3 representatives down in the U.S. Congress. And I too would echo Senator Ram Hinsdale's points and Joanna Grossman's comments. So I don't know what else to say other than we don't take much testimony on this in the State House because it is outside the scope of what we focus on. But I know voters want to know where we stand on these things, and I hope that answers the question.
And Elizabeth.
I'm just getting my feet wet here as a candidate and really care most about what affects the daily lives of Vermonters like you day in and day out. And that's where I would put all of my learning, listening, and analytical energy in terms of personal reflection. It is so special to be able to talk to your neighbors and have open, intelligent, democratic dialogue about these extremely complex and hard situations. It's absolutely horrible that we are back at war in Iran after somebody decided to reignite that conflict, which is going to affect all of us. The existence of Israel as an independent entity is really special to have happened before I was born and to perpetuate into the future. And I'm Quaker, but I have a lot of Jewish friends and patients, and I really listen to them and care deeply about them because it's not easy. It is really not easy. And I respect that. And I think pointing out a single candidate for one ideal in a public setting isn't awesome. And so I just want to thank Joanna for a great response there. And my heart bleeds for Gaza. It's just it's a terrible mess, and I'm glad we can talk about it like neighbors.
Thank you. If anybody else has another question, feel free to come up. Please keep them concise and directed to all the candidates. Thank you. Yes, please. And just press the button if it's not on already.
It's green.
Oh, wonderful. Very good. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Allison Myers. I'm from Shelburne, and appreciate you all being here tonight. I think Vermonters, you know this, that's why you're running. Vermonters feel it's not affordable here. And while we all want solutions to systems and changes, Vermonters want change tomorrow. We don't have time for population to grow. We don't have new businesses that are going to swoop in and save the day. The federal government's going to stop their funding. Vermonters are trying to balance their own household budgets and are forced to make cuts. I'm curious what each of you would choose to cut as a state government program in order to bring more affordability to Vermonters.
And Joanna, you are first up on this one.
Do I go sit down or do I stay?
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, I haven't been in the legislature, so it's sort of hard for me to say exactly what we would cut. I think it's important to be strategic about having a fairer tax structure so that we're thoughtful about where the revenue comes in and making sure that we're not placing an unfair burden on working Vermonters. I hear a lot on doors talking to voters. I think I mentioned at the top that I've done over 2,500 doors. in the district, and I've, talked with thousands of voters, outside of that as well. And I hear a lot that affordability is major and that taxes are a piece of that. That's really real. And so there's a few ways that we could handle that. One of them is, so last year, the administration's own Department of Tax modeled out a version of a second homeowner's tax that would shift some of the tax pressure, as other states have done and are doing, off of property owners and onto the 60,000 second homes and short-term rentals. We did finally implement that this year. I would have loved to have seen that done years ago. We had the supermajority for years, and I'm not talking about a one-off, I'm talking about a recurring second homeowners tax. Another way we could leverage revenue is by recapturing the 1%er tax cuts that Trump created. That would bring in a lot of new revenue and, again, reduce some of the pressure. I would love to see that put towards healthcare spending to help make healthcare more affordable for Vermonters. So sort of a convoluted answer, but those are some strategies.
Thank you very much. Ginny, you are up next.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. Thank you. I do sit on appropriations, and we try to make every penny work. And it's not an easy job, trust me. We get the budget from the governor, and then we have to work from there. So then it goes to the House, and it comes to the Senate, and we look how to improve efficiencies across the board, how we can build more collaborative work between and among departments and agencies. Having said that, I did try this year to cut. I tried to cut hospital costs in S-190 that the governor vetoed. I'll tell you what he vetoed. He vetoed $40 million this year in savings for healthcare costs for all the school districts across the state. Had we passed S-190, we would have lowered the cost of services at hospitals, with hospitals collaborating. Hospitals were working with us on this bill. We passed that bill. It would have lowered the cost of education and education staff healthcare costs, and it would have allowed for all of our school districts to have a lower healthcare cost. $40 million in savings. We also, in that bill, had lower healthcare costs for our quality health plans, the exchange. So people, small businesses and individuals buying healthcare would have seen an instant decrease next year.
Senator, I am going to cut you off there.
$1 million would not have been paid to lower property taxes this year. It would have gone back to Vermonters.
Thank you very much. Tom, you're up next.
So if I had gone before Senator Lyons, I probably would have mentioned the same things, but I'm glad she did, because reference-based pricing is something that is going to cut spending in our hospitals and our health system. But some other things that come to mind, and again, there's an advantage to not going first in these questions. I just want to acknowledge that. I will say this: the CHIT-SEs that we're doing are going to cut spending. They're going to create efficiencies so that we will have more than one supervisor, more than one school union coordinating transportation, special education, back office, HR, payroll services. So that will cut spending. Another thing, every dollar has a constituency. When you start talking cutting spending, that it is not easy to do. But one thing that when push comes to shove, if I were to go back on Senate transportation next year, I think we need to go on a road diet. We are not paving enough of our roads, and some of our standards pave too large of. I'm all for bike lanes, but we also need to think about how we can maybe slow down the speed on some of our roadways so that it's safer anyway. And maybe if you just take a foot off of how much we pave our highways, that is a lot more paving that we can, material, asphalt, and work that we can extend elsewhere. And so just rethinking our road networks to be able to extend more of our scarce resources, also funding the transportation fund with purchase and use revenues, being able to cut some of the expenditures in the transportation dollars. So I go with CISAs as well as the transportation fund, and I was going to mention some of the things that Senator Lyons mentioned.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Elizabeth.
So I'm a healthcare worker who works in the community and has for a long time. I'm not a political insider, but I do interact with the agencies and departments that are part of the most costly entity within state government, which is AHS. And our state budget I think it went up $6.5 billion in like 4 or 5 years. It was dramatic. Costs of a lot of things have gone up, but this is really dramatic. And so we have too many departments and agencies and bureaucracies. I started practicing in Vermont before Act 43 and the founding of the Green Mountain Care Board, which I would count as one of those bureaucracies. And I think simplicity is critical for us to spend less and have better access to care so we can stay healthy. And we need to do it as soon as possible. We can't keep dragging our feet session to session. I would explore combining the Department of Health with the Department of Mental Health to reduce stigma and be creative with spending and resources. It's all related. Social isolation can lead to mental illness, can lead to substance use, can lead to housing insecurity, can lead to high costs of healthcare. And that's what I have my eyes on, are those high emergency department and hospital costs. I would look at fine-tuning those departments and defining the leadership. We have a major leadership vacuum, and that's why I'm running for healthcare.
Thank you. And Keisha.
So it is uncomfortable to name names, but I have done this one on the record because I believe that when we create something, we should set an end date and some goals for what it should accomplish. And sometimes that means ruffling feathers within our own parties. And so I have many, many friends in the Cannabis Control Board world. But Senator Chittenden has heard me say this in committee. We needed a cannabis control board when it was a very unique frontier to legalize cannabis. But the Department of Liquor and Lottery, which merged when I was a legislator, could very easily take over the infrastructure of the Cannabis Control Board without the same overhead costs. We currently spend $7 million on the Cannabis Control Board, and we get only $2.5 million in fees, which raises another issue for me, which is that we used to fund much more of state government with fees for service. The governor has refused to introduce a fee bill for the last decade. So agencies that are starved rely much more heavily on general fund dollars and not on the fee-for-service model that used to be bipartisan and focus really either on polluter pays or on people getting hunting licenses, things like that for paying for the services that they receive from state government.
All right. Anybody else in the audience? Yes, come on up.
I hope Donna gives me an easy one.
Hi, I'm Donna Laban. Since somebody else brought up reference-based pricing, I would very much like to hear a comment on why that wasn't applied to reduce healthcare pricing for everyone. I heard that it was originally proposed that way and then it was changed, I believe, in the Senate. And I think that it's already, applying savings to school district healthcare spending is really unfair because they've got the gold-plated healthcare plans that nobody else gets. And so why are we only saving them money as opposed to spreading it around? Thank you.
And Ginny, you'll lead us off on this one.
My bad.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So in order to look at this, first of all, insurance premiums are a symptom of the illness, and the illness is the high hospital costs. Hospital costs are highest in the country, making us the highest hospital costs across the globe. And so lowering those service costs is critical. Well, how do you do that? Well, we had the Green Mountain Care Board do an analysis. It took some time and some effort to analyze where would the best savings be and where could we apply the best support for people in Vermont. And it came down to looking at our small businesses and our individuals within the health care exchange, what are known as the qualified health plans. Those savings and the savings for our school districts resulted in that $40 million. If you look at the other commercial plans, which are fewer and also very lucrative, there wasn't a lot of savings to be had with those hospital expenditures. Hospital expenditures within the plans that we looked at were at least 55% of the total cost. And when you do that, you get savings and you reduce premiums. It's really for the taxpayers who are paying for the health care benefit. And then for the folks who have 2 kids in high school who are on qualified health plans, or the 2 professionals who are trying to pay for health care. So the savings outside of those 2 were quite minimal, and we wanted to be able to do something quickly. The Green Mountain Care Board can do quickly, could have done quickly. Now they won't. It'll wait.
Thank you, Jenny. We're going to cut you off there. Tom.
I'm glad you got that one first, Senator Lyons, because that's definitely in your wheelhouse. My understanding, to answer the question why VHI, as well as the individuals that were most affected by the changes at the federal level, were targeted with S-190 that was vetoed, was because that's where the most impact could be had from what we're hearing from constituents. VHI would ultimately lower the cost that people spend for school health plans. So that means what our property taxes are paying for. So that would have a direct impact on lowering the healthcare costs that we're paying for in our school budgets. And the other one is the 30,000 Vermonters that their cost for health insurance doubled, if not tripled, because of changes at the federal level. And so that's where the reference-based pricing, my understanding of the bill, was targeting immediate relief for similar reasons to what Senator Lyons said. I do want to highlight, though, and this is my understanding, and I think it's consistent with the executive order that was just issued, reference-based pricing is still moving forward. That did not veto reference-based pricing. What that did was just stop a faster track for 2 specific beneficiaries. And the executive order, I think, is doing what you are advocating for, Donna, which is to continue reference-based pricing on a timeline that conforms with statute on a faster track to benefit everybody. That's my understanding, but I'm not on health and welfare, and if you know how the legislature works, you dive into topics and the committees of jurisdiction in which you're assigned, and that's where you become more of an expert. This is what I've learned from the conversations, both in the press and what the bills that we voted for on the floor.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
So, healthcare costs, what are we measuring? This is why we have de novo groups like Healthcare 911 cropping up with former leaders in the state, private sector. And this is why entities like reference-based pricing are so important. In healthcare, you charge a certain amount for a service. Like if you want to buy a refrigerator, you look around and you see who has the best price for the best product. The payment we receive, which would be you buying the fridge, is very different based on the payer and the year, and it involves a lot of complicated and secretive business, which doesn't serve regular Vermonters. And so that's part of the reason why I'm running, is because as a former physician owner for over 10 years of multiple practices, I really get the business of healthcare. I also believe 100% that it's a human right, and healthcare for all needs to be at the nucleus of all of these conversations and decisions. And so I support transparency, and I support fair costs. Part of it has to be the payment, and that's where the legislature has to work with Department of Financial Regulation, and we need leadership to bring everyone together to talk about what number we're going to focus on, how we're going to release it to the public to empower them, and how we're going to be accountable for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move to Keisha.
So I think there's something that hasn't quite been said that underscores Senator Lyons' critical work, which is actually usually a conservative talking point. We saw this become the reality in the pandemic, whether it's FEMA or the motel program. When government pays for something in a diffuse way, it can end up skyrocketing in costs without a real point of accountability. So when we all vote on our local school budgets and we negotiate this healthcare plan at the state level, and then the state employees negotiate their healthcare plan separately, there is not the same ability to apply accountability mechanisms on keeping costs down. Consumers are very sensitive to pricing. So, while it's extremely painful that the federal government cut the ACA and the middle class healthcare subsidies, we're now in a situation where property taxpayers are now paying, sometimes triple what they were paying before for their own insurance, and covering their local property tax bill and paying for that diffuse healthcare cost in government. So I think Senator Lyons' work was really well-founded and well-timed. It is, I suppose, something to see the governor move forward with reference-based pricing overall. But Senator Lyons' work on S190 and others was actually the more politically challenging work to do, which is to try and start to crank those numbers down now.
Thank you. And Joanna, you'll close us out.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm like literally shivering up here, so I'm like trying to push through that. I'm like, it happened last time too. Okay, so healthcare is a human right. There's just no question about it. I can't speak to what happened to that legislation in the Senate because I wasn't there, but I will say that I think this gets down to an issue of fairness, right? That we want everyone to have access, and we want healthcare to be affordable for everybody. So in January, 30,000 Vermonters lost their subsidies to the health exchange. So many folks I've talked to have told me they have unbelievably high premiums. I've had so many Vermonters tell me that they paid out of pocket for surgeries. They really are struggling because folks' health insurance premiums are getting so high. I've talked to many young Vermonters who are completely dropping their health insurance. And not only is that dangerous for them and their own health, but that lands them in the emergency room, which raises the cost of care for all of us. So I'm really concerned about that. I would love to see us using the recapture of that 1%er Trump tax cuts to be funding some kind of healthcare support mechanism, either moving towards universal primary care or Vermont supported subsidies to get folks insurance or healthcare spending accounts. I think there's a lot of affordable ways that we could leverage that money to make healthcare more accessible to folks. Another thing that was floated in the House last session that didn't move in the Senate was site-neutral billing. I think Elizabeth made a reference to that. That would allow independent providers to compete with hospitals to lower the cost of care for all of us.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your questions. We're going to move to closing statements now so that we can take a little intermission before our gubernatorial forum begins at 6:30. And for closing statements, we'll begin with Senator Chittenden. You'll each get a minute and a half.
I think I said this in the opening, but I'm running for re-election because I feel that I can build on my experience. In the legislature, you literally have to vote on everything under the sun. And I will say that I now know so much more than I knew 6 years ago when I ran. I ran for the South Burlington City Council when there was an open seat. I put my resume before the people and said, would you like me to use my background and experience and judgment to represent your interests as I learned about the topics? But I'll say this, the first year on City Council, I didn't know much at all. And I'm a much different person now, and I think I was a much better counselor in my second and third term. Same in the legislature. I want to build on the experience that I've now gained from service on 5 different committees. I think that the topics that we're diving into are complex, and the focus that you need to spend on learning these things, I see a great deal of value in longevity. I got to say too, I used to say term limits, and I think that still makes sense in some contexts. But I will say in state legislatures, for part-time citizen legislatures, there's a great deal of value in having the same people that understand these issues and understand how to listen to the community and try to find common ground and consensus continue to step forward. But that's why we have these elections. So if I have failed to earn your support, then that's what will happen. But know that I do care a great deal about my community and my state, and I want to give my time to continue in this service to hopefully benefit the future generations that want to live here. And please feel free to reach out, thomas.chittenden@gmail.com.
Thank you. We'll move to Elizabeth.
Thank you. This effort is like a calling for me. I am stepping up because I feel a duty to take all of the years of work, hard work with all sorts of families, observations, and systems thinking, and make good use of the citizen legislature. I would continue to work as a primary care doctor in our community while serving, so there's built-in real-time accountability, questions, answers, reflection, and hard decisions that could carry forward year after year. I really mean it. I always tell my patients to try your best and tell the truth And that's exactly what I will do as a leader. I also hope to be able to distill the most critical healthcare needs affecting people now, because meeting those needs with common sense solutions for the common good will help our younger generation thrive, while also paving many pathways for our older aging neighbors to enjoy the years they have in peace and good health. And I am 100% behind all of those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Keisha.
So I think it's clear that Vermonters and our constituents want change and they want real results. And what I'd ask is that you not throw the change makers and those getting results out um, over the frustration, despair, and anger that people are feeling. Between Senator Lyons, Senator Chittenden, and myself, we're an incredibly diverse delegation that sometimes disagree. Folks may know my mother and stepfather are now South Burlington residents on Brewer Parkway, and they've been walking with us in many of the parades. And my mother turned to me and she said, you know, it's really nice. The three of you each make a different part of the community light up and feel seen and feel heard. And that's what democracy is all about. And, you know, that's the kind of work that we've done in the Senate, serving on different committees with different passions and different ways of solving problems. It's been a privilege to be Senate Majority Leader. You know, for those of you who've known me a long time, you know it's hard to go from being a young person who's not a homeowner to being, you know, a permanent resident with two toddlers and be the Senate Majority Leader. It's very rare that someone who's had my life experience gets to where I am. And I really feel like there are just some more things I can do with all of those years of experience to serve our state. And I hope you will send me back to Montpelier to continue to do that good work on your behalf.
Thank you. Joanna.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and asking your questions and listening to us. I really appreciate the opportunity. I've said this before, even tonight, but I say it all the time. Vermont is our refuge and we need to protect it. It is so important that we create space for the next generation. That means making sure that our kids and our seniors have, and everybody in between, have housing, that they can afford health care, that we're protecting our schools and our public education, which are seriously at risk right now. And, you know, over the past 10 years, a lot of these issues have been getting worse. And I'm very concerned that this is not a sustainable life for most working Vermonters. I think we deserve better, and that's why I'm stepping up. And I hope that I have your vote. You can learn more about me at joannaforvermont.org. You can reach out anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Ginny, you'll close us out.
Thank you very much, and I do thank everyone for being here. Your questions are great. They've been difficult, some of them, but that's what life is about. You know, change at the federal level and in our state, as a result, has become the new norm, and at times it threatens the foundation of our democratic process. So it's really critically important that we have folks in Montpelier who bring experience and the ability to relate well with one another. That is absolutely key. I'm fortunate to have been elected by the full Senate, that is all Republicans, progressives, and Democrats, to serve on the Committee on Committees with the pro tem and the lieutenant governor to make decisions about placement where senators serve on their committees. That is an honor for me. It's also an important reinforcement of the fact that I do relate well with others and I try to collaborate well with the administration as well as my peers in the Senate. And that includes Senator Chittenden and Senator Rahm Hinsdale. You know, we have a lot of things to work on, including the out of whack healthcare system that we've been talking about. We have a lot to continue work on with our education system, with our children, with families, with older Vermonters. I will continue to work on building the homeless continuum that we put in place last year, and certainly the results of what we're seeing with climate change. I look forward to serving you should you elect me. and I very much appreciate your support. So thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will take a 15-minute intermission and reconvene at 6:30 to hear from our two Democratic candidates for governor.
Best timekeeping.
My name is Matthew Vigno. I am the vice chair of the South Burlington Democrats. I'll be the moderator for this evening's proceedings. I'll begin with a quick rundown of the rules, and then we will launch into things. So speaking order will be determined via a coin toss. Allie, call the toss.
Tails. Oh, digital.
Digital coin toss. It's heads, so Amanda will go first and Allie will go second. We'll alternate throughout so that everybody gets a chance to have a first bite at things. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes each for an opening statement at the beginning of the forum and 2 minutes each for a closing statement at the end of the forum. Candidates will be posed by our lovely audience, or in the event that no audience questions are forthcoming, we have a list up here. Audience members, please introduce yourselves with your name, your town of residence. Please keep your questions short, as we want to hear from them. And please direct your question evenly to both candidates, and this goes for candidates and audience members as well. Please be civil, respectful. This is a open, small d democratic forum. We want to keep things friendly and neighborly. Questions must be directed to both candidates. We've got that. If you need me to repeat a question, happy to do that. If candidates, if you invoke each other either by name or obliquely, like by saying, well, my opponent says so-and-so, we'll give you a minute for a response or rebuttal. If you have 15 seconds left in your time, Representative Krasnow, our timekeeper, will show you the yellow card. When the time is up, the timekeeper will display a red card. At that point, we'll allow you to finish your sentence, and then we'll cut you off so that we can keep things moving along. But any questions about the rules, the format? No. Wonderful. All right, Amanda, take it away. 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, and please press the button to turn your mic on. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda Janeau, and I'm running for governor because I refuse to accept that collapse is inevitable or that the best a governor can do is just manage decline. We're living through extraordinary times. Vermonters are burnt out, they're working harder than ever, and they're barely staying afloat. Our families are being crushed by housing and healthcare costs. Young people can't afford to build a life here, and our democracy is under attack. And people are anxious about the future, and for good reason. But the thing that gives me hope is that Vermont has never been a place that accepts our fate to be dictated by the powers that be. I was born and raised in rural Vermont, being shown that strong communities aren't built by billionaires or distant political institutions. They're built by the people who know how to build what's needed, to repair what's broken, to fix what's in front of us, and to grow what sustains us. That lesson stayed with me and why I've spent my entire career, over 15 years, working with governments and communities across the United States and around the world to build really strong, resilient local economies, helping governments to develop long-term economic strategies, strengthen local businesses, create good jobs, and align their state budgets with what matters most: good healthcare, housing, education, thriving communities, and a healthy environment. This is the work I know how to do, and this is the work that Vermont needs now. I'm running for governor because I believe that Vermont has a responsibility in this moment, not only to ensure every Vermonter is safe and secure in their basic needs, but to help show this country that another future is still possible. Because freedom isn't just something we defend at the ballot box. We defend freedom by creating the conditions that allow people to be free. And I've spent my career helping governments to create those types of conditions. And I know that together, we already have everything we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And I should have mentioned this was in the written rules. Please hold your applause until the end. We'll give both candidates and democracy a big hand, just that we're not taking out of your candidate's time. Allie, go ahead.
Hi, folks. It is such an honor to be in South Burlington. I just have to say, you are making moves here. Right down the street, we got a childcare center, right in worker-supported housing. That's pretty amazing. You know, coming out on a beautiful summer night to be here with us in this room, you're fighting for your neighbors in your community. You're fighting for democracy. I want you all so badly to have a governor that's going to fight just as hard alongside you. So let me tell you, I grew up on a dirt road in Newberry, Vermont, because my parents thought this is the best place in the world to raise a family. And you know what? They were right. So when I started my career as an organizer, I realized that that Vermont that I grew up in is not accessible. So I spent the last 10 years working on a root cause of our affordability crisis, which is childcare. So we built a coalition of 40,000 Vermonters, and we passed the most significant childcare bill in the country. And that's when Phil Scott tried to stop us, okay? But it didn't work because we overrode his veto with all the Dems, all the progs, a bunch of Republicans, a handful of independents, and the only libertarian in that building. That's a real Vermont conversation. And that's why this law is working. Okay, so we beat Phil Scott once, and we need to do it again. Because that affordability crisis, it's gotten worse by every other measure. All right, we know how to organize successfully. We've done it. Now imagine what we can do when we're in charge. Housing, healthcare, education. Okay? We can build the Vermont that we love and deserve. So let's do it together. Thank you so much for being here.
Very good, thank you. We'll now open up the floor for questions. If you would like to come up to the podium, just press the button at the base of the mic to turn on your microphone, give your name, town of residence, and ask your question in a succinct and respectful way. But, Eddie, go ahead, Megan.
I love breaking the ice. So my name is Megan Emery. I am from South Burlington. I've lived here for 24 years, and I think this is a special place, and you both articulated that very well. We also live on a globe that is a special place, and our state has to do its part in making sure that we lower emissions. Please tell us how you are going to address not only transferring to solar and to renewables, but lowering emissions and energy use for the state. Thank you.
And Allie, you'll respond first to this one.
Thank you, Megan. Well, Burlington, South Burlington's on track to be a walkable, bikeable city, so we can really look at your example. You know, look at what's working in Vermont and do more of that. I was just over in Winooski visiting a bike shop, and this is my favorite line. Maybe I've heard on the trail. The owner of the bike shop said, "I majored in political science, which is why I run a bike shop." That's pretty cool. I was like, "Can I get a bumper sticker of that, please?" Okay, he's helping folks trade their car in for a bike, full families. So if we can catch up with that infrastructure, you know, and then in the more rural areas, it's free buses. We did it for COVID. Why did we stop doing it? Why you can't stop doing something when you figured out it works. So we need, you know, go back to that free buses. I'm really curious about commuter rail. You know, I'm really curious about families moving on to honestly, bikes where they can for that second car, it's their second car. Car share program, wildly successful, a really smart idea from a Vermonter, and we can grow that. There are so many things that we can do to lower emissions in the state of Vermont, and we used to be the leader. We used to be the tip of the spear for this country, and that's one of the things that little fierce Vermont can do to lower emissions is de-risk things for the rest of the country. You know, guess what? Leader in renewable energy, in solar, in wind, just as you said, and storage, and lowering emissions through all of these amazing community programs. And guess what? We all have cheaper, you know, cleaner energy because of it. So I think it's just a great example of how we could really lead the country. And when we de-risk solutions, it will lower emissions at a much greater rate than even us just doing it here in Vermont.
Excellent. Amanda, go ahead.
Thanks so much for the question. So I've spent the last 5-6 years or so working with governments that have been part of what we call the well-being economy movement. And this is a coalition of governments that are both across this country and around the world that have recognized that economic growth and stock market values accompanied by worsening inequality and climate outcomes cannot be viewed as success. And so they've developed alternative definitions and national performance frameworks that are really centered in our social and ecological well-being and align their budgets accordingly. And so a great example is in Wales, where they went through a process of asking their citizens, what kind of Wales do you want to leave for your children and grandchildren? And on this basis, they articulated these 7 long-term well-being goals, which were centered not only in health and equity, culture and community, but biodiversity, global responsibility, and even their definition of prosperity was an innovative, productive society that respected planetary boundaries. And they passed a really visionary legislation that required a whole of government transformation to set clear 25-year targets and to establish a commissioner whose tenure is always longer than any political administration or cycle to hold the government to account. And what that looked like in practice was when they wanted to build a new highway through the country, for example, they had to make the case for how it would contribute to all 7 goals. And when they couldn't make the case for contributing to any of the goals, except for maybe one, they put a permanent freeze on all new road development. So all that money would go into public transportation and active travel instead, which they could clearly see as contributing to a more equitable, sustainable, globally responsible Wales. And I say this because the goals we set matter. And I would say in Vermont, whenever I ask Vermonters what they love about living here, the thing I hear time and time again is community and our natural beauty. And so these need to be our North Star and our orientation point, and for us to invest much more in public transportation, rail, and connective bus routes, because that is the major emitter in our state, and so that we can reduce emissions and ensure our long-term sustainability.
Thank you very much. Next question, anybody? Wow, the Senate people were much more talkative. All right.
Oh, we got one.
Oh, yes, come on up, Linda.
Hi, my name's Linda Bailey. I live here in South Burlington. Being governor is a huge job, and I know from the things you've already said that you know that. But what is the one thing that you see as being the most important thing, or the thing that you are most enthusiastic about doing as governor? Thank you.
Yes,
Yes, go
being
ahead.
governor is absolutely, a monumental job, I would say, particularly in this moment in history, where we not only face a variety of immediate crises, whether that's healthcare and housing, but climate change, AI, authoritarianism. There are so many compounding crises. And I think the role of governor is to not just react to the crises in front of us, but proactively prepare and plan for the ones that are coming down the road. And so what I see is, as governor, the first things I would want to do is, one, to really advance a true universal primary care policy to ensure everybody's healthy, but also to empower the state agencies to be more responsive to our community's needs, because that's where I see the most innovations actually happening in this moment. As I've been traveling across the state, every event I've gone to, I've been asking folks, what are the things you're most proud of in your community? Because even with this healthcare policy, we have a town in Tunbridge that just hired their own town nurse. Great. That seems like a really great solution to this issue. Let's bring back small town nurses and doctors to all of our communities, or others who are like here in South Burlington, who have stood up and protected their neighbors in moments when ICE has come and really illustrated what it looks like for neighbors to stand together in moments of threat or attack. And so I believe that these are the types of examples that we can have a government that doesn't just have top-down directives, but really provides the resourcing, tools, and power that is necessary to local communities to lead the way forward.
Allie, go ahead.
What a delightful question, Linda. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's different than questions that we get. So the role of governor, absolutely, it's huge. And the thing I am most excited about is building a team, a really diverse team, different ages from across Vermont, different expertise, different lived experiences. Because I think the best thing a CEO can do is build an amazing team that's really connected with the people on the ground and empower them to do amazing work and to be leaders. Because the issues that face us in Vermont are urgent and they're systemic and they're many, honestly, it's something that this current governor said is, I can only handle one crisis at a time. So I'm focusing on education. do Vermonters get to handle one crisis at a time? I think that's ridiculous, honestly. You're the governor, and so I'm very excited to build a team. It's one of the reasons I decided to run in the first place, of just thinking of all these amazing leaders who are ready to go and ready to sort of do this together. And I also think a governor does a lot of things. One is being the CEO of the state, and the other one is setting a tone and a culture. The day that I decided to run was the day that the governor gave his budget address, and he made me feel bad as a citizen of Vermont. Everything that's wrong with Vermont, he wagged his finger, all the problems, no ideas, no energy, no solutions, and no mention of childcare. And it was the same day the New York Times had come here to say, who in this country has actually made life more affordable for any American? And their answer was people with kids in the state of Vermont. And so they came to do a national story celebrating this as the model, and they interviewed me and a bunch of parents and business leaders and others the day he gave his budget address, and he should be singing it from the rooftops. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways. When you set a tone, you set a culture of excitement, of energy, of hope, where we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. And so, and then tangibly, we'll get into the details of, I think, the policy, hopefully in other questions. We need an economic action plan. So we know our priorities, we have targets, we have goals. That's what you empower your team to do. And housing and healthcare are the first two pillars of my economic action plan.
Great, thank you. Come on up.
Thanks. My name is Elizabeth Hunt, and I live in Charlotte. And I am a working primary care healthcare provider. And I was a little not surprised, but concerned that our current sitting governor is working on executive actions to involve himself in healthcare changes. Similar actions occurred with education. And I also feel like, as someone with their hands in the dough, you're always explaining how your field works. And so I'd like to ask, if elected, how would you interact with the local healthcare community and create a welcoming, learning, evolving dialogue and set of shared goals to benefit all Vermonters? And what would you look for from people like me who work in the community? Thank you for running, both of you.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt, and thank you for running. It's amazing to see women putting themselves out there for office. So what a great question. A couple, just to address the opening, the governor's doing a couple things the last couple of weeks on healthcare that are actually very disturbing and honestly almost surprising, because they show a lot of very troubling trends. So first of all, almost out of spite, I don't know, he vetoed the bill that a lot of folks did come together in the community, including the Green Mountain Care Board that is charged with moving forward on reference-based pricing to start controlling costs. To take the first step at figuring that out and really materially save millions of dollars for Vermonters by starting reference-based pricing with a population of folks. And he said, I will only want it if it's for everyone. It's targeted for just a group of people. Which is like, so you don't do anything because you didn't do everything. And the person the people in charge of doing this asked for this, as a coalition. And so he vetoes that. And then he does an executive order, which again feels like Trump's theory of executive power, circumventing the democratic process to do something that was also incremental. So it's like the legislature didn't go with my idea, so I'm going with my own, right? Very troubling. So I just really needed to put my finger on that for you. So the way I do my work is empowering the people most impacted to be in the driver's seat. So I've already been talking to a lot of folks in FQHCs, in free clinics, in hospitals, academics who are thinking about primary care. And I can't wait to keep talking with you and others. My own primary care doc is pulling together all of her, primary care colleagues to talk about this. We really, really do need to move to full access to primary care. We're about 10% of our spending on primary care. It should be 15% in countries that actually get this right. So we've got a ways to go. And to me, what I've heard from the community is you have to get primary care providers out of the business of insurance, and you have to build a pipeline emergent, like it's the emergency that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda, go ahead.
Thank you for that. And to start with your question around what is the goal of healthcare and how do we set that? I mean, the goal of healthcare should always be to have a healthy, thriving society. And I think the issue that we are seeing in Vermont, you know, we have the highest healthcare premiums in the country. Our healthcare system is collapsing. You know, down in Brattleboro, for example, they're about to lose their birthing center. And that has been a series where we lost the birthing center in Springfield and then in Morrisville and now potentially in Brattleboro. And it raises a question about the problems with our insurance-based fee-for-service structure, because any type of care, like bringing a baby into this world, takes time, it takes trust, and it takes relationship. But our current system will reimburse short, quick procedures, tests, surgeries at a much higher rate than they will things like maternity care or primary care. And that's because we have built a system that rewards what's profitable, not what's essential. And so I think this is our moment to recognize that a profit-oriented healthcare system is not a good idea, and that we have an opportunity and actually an obligation. We passed a law that requires the state to provide universal health care to our citizens, and we have not been fulfilling that. But it also provides us an opportunity in this moment to fulfill that duty by creating a state-funded universal health care system. And I feel like that is really important, not only for us to get to the root of many of these other crises that we're facing right now, but also because 30% of our budget currently comes from the federal government, and most of it is for healthcare. And I do not want us to capitulate to this administration on the basis of budgetary considerations.
All right. Yes, come on up. Oh, can you just make sure the mic is on? Oh, good.
Oh, it's not bright enough. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, it's tricky.
It's a bright green light. Thank you. So I'm so happy that you're here and that we're here. And it's very clear that you're each articulate, capable, strong commitment to this work. I'm interested to know, how is it that you each take care of yourselves so this is not a 24/7 commitment, and that we know that when you assume office as governor, as one of you will, that you will be able to sustain the kind of energy that we're seeing now.
Could you give us your name? I'm sorry.
Yes, it's Cheryl Green, and I live in Burlington.
There we go. Thank you.
I know, this is so nice.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
really like this structure. What a lovely question. Thanks, Cheryl. So I would say for myself personally, I am definitely a work hard, play hard kind of person. I love fun. And so I would say, even in this campaign itself, one of the joys has been trying to make events that are as fun as possible. So we just went and tailgated at the Vermont Greens game. Go Greens, you know. We're going to be doing a tubing floating down the river in the White River next weekend. We've got a barn party coming up. But yeah, music, friends, like really just remembering why we do this is for the joy and the connection, being able to, for me, my nervous system, always walking in the woods. There's something so incredibly rejuvenating about that, of just being outside with my dog and with friends. And so those are the types of things, as well as, some meditation as well is always good.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, what a great question. And it's really important. I just want to say, I have a lot of wonderful sort of mentors and guides in my life, and they've actually made it pretty, you might be surprised at some of these things. They've made it pretty clear, and it's something that I know, but help me really understand it, that when you're in a position like this, and especially if you're elected, if you're grounded in your own nervous system, it really projects in a way that's hard to explain. And that can really send out this like ripple effect to people that really can be meaningful. And on the flip side, fascist dictatorships rely on people having nervous systems that are kind of compromised because so we're in this agitated state of paralysis all the time. So for me, I need to know my sleeves are rolled up and I am moving forward so that I am, focused on something, especially when the world is on fire. And so I agree. It's funny. We both grew up on a dirt road in Orange County. We have a lot of similarities. We also work hard, play hard, and we also like to tube. We go tubing as a group of friends every year. And we also like FC Green. I just went with my family. We're going to see the women on Saturday for the playoff right here. Go FC Green. I also love karaoke. And it's very fun. We're having our first karaoke campaign event. Because I love being in community with people and I'm such an extrovert, I feed off of this. So I have to watch myself a little bit. I feed off of talking to people. It energizes me. And so, at the end of an exhausting week, I say to my poor husband, who's an introvert, "Oh, I'm so tired. Let's have all of our friends over for dinner." It's like, no, let's go into a dark, quiet room. So thank you for saying that, because I actually think modeling a sustainable form of leadership where there's joy is how we go the distance.
Good. All right. Somebody come on up. You can figure it out amongst yourselves.
Oh, is it on? Yeah. Okay. I'm Jed Pfeffer. I'm from Greensboro, Vermont. So the Northeast Kingdom has had a hard time economically, I think, in the state. And even though it has survived a lot and it has great beauty, young people are finding it extremely difficult to find housing. So I'd love to know, what will you do to make it more affordable for a young person, a young couple, to have a house, have some land, maybe just be able to rent something. Thank you.
Thank you, Jed. Is it me first?
I think so.
Okay. Thank you so much. I just want to share that I was just in Guildhall, a small town in the Northeast Kingdom, the other day, and it was so inspiring because we have a real choice right now in Vermont. Are we going to let small towns in the Northeast Kingdom not be inhabited, or are we going to actually say this is our strength for Vermont, and this is, we need to see this as the unbelievable asset it is, and allow young people to, be in the Northeast Kingdom, to be in these small towns, to have the infrastructure they can to be there. And so what was amazing about Guildhall is a lot of my classmates from Oxbow High School in Bradford, Vermont, went back to the land to Guildhall from Bradford. So remote to remoter, and they're making a life there. And it's amazing what they're doing. They're bringing their own jobs. Some of them are coming from out of state, bringing their remote jobs. Some of them are creating jobs, regenerative farming. They've reclaimed a lot of unused homes. My friend just actually rebuilt an entire 250-year-old farmstead that had been taken by nature. And so we have to do everything that we can to say no to the downward trend and yes to the growth. And housing is the thing. Okay, you nailed it with your question. It's the thing that will allow us to grow our base, get young people here, get the regenerative movement going. And so there are things we know how to do already in housing that are working. You build more of it and you build it cheaper so that it can be cheaper and more accessible for folks. And we supercharge what we know works. So I think it's the governor's job to really put all of our power towards this and focus up. Number one priority, and show why it's important. So you do things like you do tax on second homes so that we're really stopping behavior of moving homes out of the primary market there. You put a sales tax holiday on building materials to make it easier to build. You encourage folks that we're already seeing, like the Northern Forest Center in Maine, to manufacture homes that already meet 250 regulations, and they're cheaper so that they can be bought cheaper. You do templates for municipal and local zoning. There's a million things you can do. This is my number one priority, so you can also go on my website and see the whole plan, because I got a red card here.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, the housing challenge or crisis, is not unique to the Northeast Kingdom. It's across the state, and, honestly, it's across this country as well. And I would say the reason for this is yes, we need to build more housing, but we also need to be clear, who are we building this housing for? Because now the average cost of a new house is $750,000, okay? The average cost in general is over $400,000. And so 98% of Vermonters aren't even eligible for a loan for the average new house price, okay? So that means that the people who can afford these houses are going to be big investors and corporations. And so I think this requires a few different steps. Yes, we definitely need to build housing, but we also need to get to the root of our housing system, which is the fact that we've been treating housing as an investment and not as homes. And so first, we need to severely limit private equity and large corporate ownership of our housing stock. To prevent the majority of housing from getting gobbled up, we have a progressive income tax structure, but a regressive property tax system. So the majority of our property tax burden falls on middle class and working class Vermonters. So we need to not only tax second homes, but vacation rentals and luxury estates at a higher rate, so we can reduce the property tax burden for residential Vermonters and generate the revenue to put into permanently affordable housing, which means co-ops, housing trusts, public housing, and to actually provide, there's first-time home buyers incentives. There's no first-time home builder incentives. So for people who want to build their own homes or renovate also homes we have the oldest housing stock in the country. And then in terms of rentals, I think it's really important that we allow towns to pass rent stabilization or control without having to go through the legislature and through the governor's office for that, right? And last but not least is decreasing the cost of building through vocational training and producing more of our own building materials here as well.
Very good. Did you have a question, sir? Come on up.
I'm John Dinklage, South Burlington. First, thank you both for running. This is a big challenge and a big effort. Let's address the issue of homelessness and addiction. And please talk about what we can do new, different, better. Thank you.
Yes. Great. So the question related to homelessness and addiction in our society, I think one of the cruelest decisions was to just shut down the hotel motel program without having any strategy in terms of how we were going to support those people or any strategy of how we're going to ensure everybody is housed in this state. Because again, as mentioned, we have a major housing crisis. And especially when we talk about the intersections of homelessness and addiction, all evidence has shown that the most effective strategy is a housing first model. So this is where you ensure that people have stable housing, apartments. So that's either converting, for example, these motels into permanent apartments or using vacant public housing or commercials like spaces to turn into permanent apartments, and then wraparound services. You bring addiction support, mental health support, and vocational or employment support to people. And that has been shown to be the most effective way to combat addiction and to actually permanently solve the homelessness crisis in a way that is humane and also maintains our communities whole.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, John. The way I see it is the way we have addressed this issue in the state for the last 10 years is unacceptable. It's shameful. That it doesn't reflect the compassion that I have for fellow Vermonters and that I know other Vermonters have for their neighbors. One of the things that we have to understand is it's a statewide problem. It really needs a statewide solution, and we can't keep pushing it out to municipalities as a state, because we all benefit when we're really taking care of this issue. And it is very unfair to say to Burlington, South Burlington, to Brattleboro, to St. Johnsbury, here you go, thanks a lot. Towns have started, I'm not sure if you all have, calculating how much money of municipal dollars that you're actually spending to support folks, when really it's a state problem, when you're doing what the state asks you to do to sort of have them in your communities. And so I just have the conversation with COTS. I just had the conversation with Howard Center, with Champlain Housing Trust. We have wonderful services. We know it works. It's a web all the way from mental health services, shelters, all the way up to the full fix, which is permanent affordable housing with services embedded. Okay. There's this great book called Homelessness as a Housing Problem. It's pretty clear that our vacancy rates, our lack of vacancy, our lack of mobility in the market is really the correlation here. So that's investing in that. And I just want to say, a budget is a value statement. You all know this. You can't convince me we are spending $9 billion so effectively that we cannot spend some of that money being compassionate, understanding. When I'm governor, I will be here on the ground with your community, with the folks doing the work, understanding who is here, why and how, and what they need, getting real curious. Because what I see is a real lack of curiosity and a real lack of energetic collaboration with communities from the state.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Back in the 80s, I ran for a local office in Burlington, and I think I spent about maybe $200 or $300 max, and that was high end. Nowadays, office like that, people spend a lot more.
Yeah.
And when it comes to running for governor, it's way more. Money in elections. What can you do about it? How can we get it back down the way?
And could you just give us your name, sir?
Oh, Peter Lukowski from Burlington.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for running back in the day. All right, thank you for this question. It's critical, and it actually intersects a lot with my own personal story. I went out of state, like so many of my friends, after I graduated high school to change the world. I started working on the first Obama campaign, and I ran home about as fast as I could. The main reason was because money shouldn't be in politics. People in DC at that time who didn't agree, didn't talk to each other or work together. That was very disillusioning. But, we were on the cusp of Citizens United. And that's the seed of destruction in our democracy. And it has borne out exactly as we all thought it would. And so it's really a problem. So I'm not accepting any corporate donations or any corporate PAC money. All of my money is from individuals, who believe in this campaign, who believe in my leadership, have seen me in action. But even so, you're right. I wish it wasn't so. It's a bad use of our time as candidates. And it's bad for democracy to have money here. So, what I think can do is we don't need to wait. We need fundamental reform at the federal level. Fundamental reform. If I was running for president, this would be top of the list, and that's the thing though, we don't need to wait. While that's true and that's necessary, we don't also need to wait. There are things we can do in Vermont. So we can actually set up a law, and Hawaii has done it and other states are starting. And we have a couple organizations that have been really studying it and promoting it, where we can actually ban corporate donations in the state of Vermont as a way that, again, we can be a leader and shine a light. When we do things like that, it sets an example. It shines a light on the root cause of this issue. And then it really helps, I think, turn people's attention to it and opinions on it nationally. But it's critically important. And thank you for asking the question so we can address it.
The question was about campaign finance reform? Yes, please, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I will say running for office is a joy in the sense of being able to connect with folks from all over the state. And the worst part is definitely having to ask people for money. It's, I think a truism of Vermont is we're very generous, but we hate asking for help, and that's the other side of it. We desperately need to get money out of politics. It's how we're maintaining an incredibly corrupt political system where ostensibly, you can end up buying elections by having enough money that you can influence or determine, as we're seeing at the national level, our federal government and these multinational tech bros have ostensibly just colluded at this point around their agenda. And so I do think this is a moment where we need states to be standing up, and we're seeing that leadership. So obviously Hawaii, right, is trying to ban corporate donations. I think Montana, even more exciting, is just trying to challenge the whole notion of corporate personhood, which is the foundation of Citizens United. I mean, one of the things that I don't think we always recognize, but it's actually states that have the sole authority over the Articles of Incorporation. We determine what rights, what structures, and what responsibilities corporations have at the state level. And that's a pretty powerful power that we have to be able to challenge some of the fundamental foundations of this, as well as being able to advance, my hope would be, truly publicly financed campaigns. So we all get a bit of money. That's all you get. And then, you know, go forth and convince the people, because I think we'd end up with a lot more candidates stepping up who represent the true diversity of our community.
Great. Senator Chittenden.
Oh, just Tom.
Okay.
Tom from South Burlington. My question is how do you see, what is your vision for a more affordable and equitable public education school system in Vermont?
Try doing that in 2 minutes.
Yeah, really. Yeah, absolutely. So I know this has been the major focus of a lot of our government efforts over the last couple of years has been focused on education. And I would say my frustration has been that some of it hasn't fully made sense to me economically in terms of the logic, I would say, of the argument has been we need to consolidate schools to reduce costs, even though there isn't a lot of evidence to prove that that'll actually reduce costs, because we did that a few years ago with Act 46 and it hasn't been shown to save anything. And similarly, the major drivers of rising education spending has been healthcare for teachers and mental health support for kids, right? And so if you're not dealing with those cost drivers, you're actually not going to end up reducing education spending, just cutting it. And so for me, you know, I grew up going to one of those small schools that's sort of on the chopping block, 13 kids in a grade. And I feel like as I've been traveling around, everybody's been talking about the importance of their schools, not just for their kids, but for the community. It is a center of community life. And so in 2021, I know the legislature piloted this program of community schools, which solves a few of our different problems, which is the idea that you lean into the idea of the school as being a community hub by integrating more wraparound services, state and nonprofit, into the school themselves. So it becomes a space where you have social workers, mental health providers, free healthcare, continuing adult education, pre-K, food banks, etc. And that would be fantastic. So then you're really dealing with ensuring that not only the kids have the foundations they need to thrive, but the communities and their families do. Because that's what's been shown as the most effective way to improve educational outcomes. And just fiscally, I will say, it solves the problem because it would diversify the budget streams that are going to our schools, and so reduce the pressure just on property taxes.
Thank you for asking. Just Tom tonight. I just want to say, I think we've lost the plot on this one a little bit. My dad was a public high school teacher for 35 years. He was my teacher at Oxbow High School. I was on the State Board of Ed as a student member when I was 15. Howard Dean appointed me. I need to bring us back to the notion that education is transformational. It has transformational power. It's the thing we've got in our society. It's the tool we've got for a more equitable and just world. It's what we have. And I have been traveling around Vermont and seen every community pretty much torn apart with the way that the debate has been going. And I really have been able to pinpoint that it's because there's been a lack of vision and goals and values from the top. Not one person I've asked can actually tell us what we're debating in education. Is it just lowering property taxes? Is it educational excellence? Is it a thinly veiled debate about independent schools versus public schools? Honestly, every single person is talking about something different. That's a problem, because when you don't know what the North Star is, where you're going, and that it's going to be better, you go into your corner with your thing, and we don't talk and we don't actually have a real conversation. So, you got to understand the values. I mean, for example, I think there are many: affordable and equitable. You said them. Those two, you have to balance those things. That's true. Our property taxes are crushing us, but what is happening with our kids, you know? And so when you've seen one district in Vermont, you've seen one district in Vermont. That's the weird thing here. So we try to do these things that we want to work on the ground. They don't always do it. So for me, something really critically important is the agency of education becoming a service organization with data that's real and that you can use and trust, which is not happening now, where they are actively in community saying, here's your data. Here's your scores. What is your goal and value as a community? Do you think your kids are getting the education they deserve? If not, why? You know, how are the costs here? You know, if not, why? Here are the questions to ask. Here's to have a real community conversation about it. And then these shared services models. We gotta figure out where the efficiencies are. And the shared services are one. We did that in childcare. You scaffold economies of scale over micro units. That's really smart. And then you start finding value, and then you grow from there. I'd like to see those over the CTE regions, so we start building up of some power we have already and really focusing on getting more CTE out into the world and kids into those programs as well.
Thank you. Jonathan, go ahead.
Jonathan Ferguson, South Burlington. My question is, maybe just have you discuss the triple threat of surveillance capitalism, big tech, and AI, and of course the consequent influence in our political system. Thank you.
Oh, great question. Okay. We have to be a beacon of hope in Vermont because we know how to do community here, and it's an antidote to so many of these things. And we have to shine a light. This is back to the shine a light on what is happening, and then maybe people wake up, right? I like to see global regulation of these things. They are existentially threatening us. So then what can we do in Vermont? Here's a couple things. I want in the first 100 days when I'm governor, that data center bill back on my desk for signature. It is mind-boggling that the governor did not sign that bill. Do you know that it didn't even ban data centers? It just said communities had a say in where they go and how they interact with the grid. That's not radical, people. That's like how we do things in Vermont, pretty much. And so the fact that he would not sign that bill and say, because it makes Vermont look like we're not open for business. Okay, data centers suck up our water, skyrocket our costs, and make no permanent jobs. So the only thing that's bad for business in that context is our governor saying the words, Vermont's bad for business. Okay, unacceptable. Want that bill on my desk. You know, and again, someone said to me the other day, well, they got to go somewhere. I was like, oh, really? This is what Vermont can do. Kind of put that big stop sign up and make people stop and think, why? What are we doing? Unbridled growth of something that's eating away at our democracy, you know, at our brains. And I also want to take a really good look at, you know, the legislature has done some stuff like kids code, you know, privacy, data privacy, especially for kids, you know, some work with technology in schools. I want to make sure it's working and strengthen it where we can and build on it, especially with the tech in schools. What we understand now with the science is pretty unequivocal. And, you know, it starts with pretty young, vulnerable targets and it goes all the way up, you know, the spectrum. So, again, I think we have a couple bright spots like kids code to work on, but we got a lot to do. And I think the big thing we can do is put up the flag in Vermont and start getting people to think differently on this.
Thank you, Allie. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you so much for this question, because honestly, I would say it's probably one of the biggest existential and most urgent things that we need to be making moves on now, because our government seems clearly to be focused on creating some kind of like AI military dictatorship here, right? And there's a reason why the government keeps trying to ban states from being able to regulate AI, and that's because we have power, and we have to use that power now. And so I feel very strongly that, like, yes, of course, we need to be a national leader in terms of, you know, we should put a clear moratorium on any data centers. They shouldn't be here, as well as data privacy and liability, banning flock cameras, that kind of thing. But actually, I think we're actually at a moment where the level of the threat that this technology faces to us, not just economically, but also as a society, I've been talking with Mike Pichek because I want a coalition of states. If we even just got a handful of states to divest our pensions from the largest AI companies, we would crash them. Like, we have more economic power than we know. And I think we need to be using that power strategically and more proactively forming coalitions of states to push back against this administration and the level of concentration of power and surveillance that it is promulgating in this moment.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, please come on up.
Hi, Deborah McClellan, South Burlington. How are you going to beat Governor Scott?
The question of the hour.
How am I going to meet him? Beat. Oh, yes. Governor Scott.
Oh, you'd have a hard time meeting him too, from what I hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here we go. So good news is, I would say, there was some recent polling that showed that his popularity is actually at an all-time low. And that's wonderful, because one of the biggest things we had to beat to begin with was the self-fulfilling narrative that he is the most popular governor or that he can't be beat, right? And I think this is the moment, because I think we're all recognizing and yearning to be part of something that feels proactive and not just reactive in this moment. And so going across the state, I would say there's a lot of frustration, both around education, around the AI data center sort of vetoes, around his alignment with some of these groups like the Koch brothers, Vermonters for American Prosperity, and how that seems to be influencing a lot more of his policies than just public opinion in this moment. But for me personally, I would say some of what's interesting, probably because I grew up, in small town Vermont, is that my economic philosophy is definitely progressive in the sense that I believe everybody should have the necessary foundations to live a life of dignity and purpose, like food, housing, healthcare, etc. But I also really believe that we're seeing the dangers of too much concentrated power by government or by the private sector. And so I believe strongly actually in decentralizing a lot more decision-making and power and resources back to our towns to empower more community self-determination and to ensure that there are checks and balances that are in place in this moment that prevent that level of concentration of power from happening again. And so that has been really resonating, I would say, for a lot of, let's say, more independent kind of Vermonters who really just want to feel secure right now, but also want to feel like they have space for self-determination as well, and that the government's not going to be in their business for everything all of the time. Yeah.
Great question. I would say we're going to beat him with respect. I just want to say that because a lot of people voted for Phil Scott in this state, and we don't want them to feel ashamed. We want to, retire him. We don't need to fire him. Okay. Thank you very much for your service. If you can't afford to live in this state, you got to ask yourself, is it time for a new approach? What's going to be so magical about 2 more years that we didn't see in the last 10? And I want to say, no one's been pushing back on him for 10 years. So we're out there talking to a lot of people. This is permeated. We need to push our thinking on this. We need to push our friends' thinking on this. Okay. What is going to be so different about the next 2 years? Because when you're blaming, you're not leading. He's diagnosed the problems perfectly, and he's blamed the legislature on everything. Well, I'm sorry. The one constant is him. He'll say, well, the supermajority. No. 2 years out of 10 was a supermajority. So that's really not real. But he really gets a lot of credit with that. I agree. Everyone in Vermont is pissed about education. And for the first time, they're actually blaming him, said the legislature. And also there's a national mood right now where people don't like incumbents because they're tired of the status quo. It is broken. You got to acknowledge the status quo is not working. So we've got nowhere to go but up. We're a small place in Vermont. You take the big swings, you make sure it's working, you make course corrections if it's not, and you go, And so people, I think, look, we don't have term limits in Vermont, but we have common sense. If he gets elected one more time, he'll be the longest serving governor in the history of Vermont, 12 years. Okay. So I just got to say, I have identical twin boys. They're 7.5. So your question earlier about how do I take care of myself? I talk to my boys. They're my philosophers. They're my grounding agents. And Bo, one of my twins, says, Mommy, what's Phil Scott's logo? How does he even know to ask that? I was like, well, it's a checkered flag because he's a race car driver. And he said, well, that's funny. I would have figured it was a flat tire because he's not bringing us anywhere. Look, he said it, I didn't, so I can use that now, okay? Because we're doing this with respect. Thank you for the question.
All right. Any more questions? Oh.
Hi, my name is Dawn Philibert. I live in South Burlington. This might be kind of the elephant in the room, but I'm assuming most of us in this room are Democrats, and we have before us two very bright, energetic, informed women who want to be elected to change Vermont. How do we pick between you? Can you combine and join together? I mean, help us understand, please.
Weird genetics.
How we, and I know you want to be respectful and you don't want to throw anyone under each other under the bus, but what are the differences? Help us understand that, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, look, our names will start with A's. I want to double down on what you're saying. I just want to acknowledge it's hard to run a friendly primary. We are competing against each other, and it's a value that we both share, and that I think it's good for the world and good for female candidates and good for democracy to like show that we can do this. Like we can have a reasonable debate respectfully, and that the eye on the prize is Phil Scott, because we've got to beat him. Okay. So I hope this is the beginning of a beautiful collaboration between us in one way or another. And I think there are differences. I look to our experience and our ideas, and there are differences. And then you can make an informed decision based on that. And so I think we have very different experience. You know, I was a CEO of an organization for many years, and it's, you know, you are the CEO of Vermont when you take on this role, and there is a steep learning curve when, you know, you're in management. So I have experience and I have relationships from working most of my professional career, even when I was 15, in Vermont. And so I'm very excited to just be able to start on day one with knowing, you know, how the levers of the system work and where they are, so I can change them. And so I think it's experience, it's relationships, and there are differences in some of our ideas. I mean, for example, our interaction with the federal government. I too will fight. I will fight against this president. I hate to even refer to him as that. But I do believe that a third of our budget is from the federal government. And one way we fight is we maximize those federal dollars. We paid into them. They're our dollars. So we fight for those dollars that are ours and owed to us. And it's, it's a very difficult proposition to think that we are not going to take federal dollars. You know, we really, really rely on those in Vermont, and we can't make them up otherwise. So I see that one way as we fighting against the federal government.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of, some of the differences in terms of experience and ideas, I think we definitely agree about a lot of the problems that are facing Vermont, right? Like we recognize housing and healthcare. We care about the state and our communities. I think for me, a lot of it is, I really just believe that this is a moment where we have to do more than like tinker with the systems that created these problems in the first place, and to be really bold and be willing to, for example, ask the wealthiest Vermonters to pay their fair share, to challenge the idea of housing as a speculative asset, or to ensure that healthcare is an actual public good that is free and available to anyone. My background as an economist, I think, allows me to see how all of these different issues that we're facing are fundamentally interconnected. My experience working in the executive branch of government has been so focused on implementation. And because that's the thing, so often, policy making can be great ideas, but the actual function of implementation is where there's a big gap. And so how do we make sure that we are not only advancing bold ideas, but building the type of capacity within our government to be able to effectively implement them? And so I'm really grateful to have the Vermont State Employees Union's endorsement, for example. Like, as a candidate for governor, that's pretty much, the biggest endorsement you can get, because that's your team. They're the ones who you're going to be working with day in and day out to really try to improve Vermont's quality of life. And so, yeah, I think, you've got champagne problems here, but I think the beautiful thing is we're not running against each other, we're running for Vermont. And then it's up to you to decide whatever strikes your fancy.
Well, thank you very much. On that note, I'm going to move to closing statements, although it feels like those would have been. But if you would like an additional 2 minutes each, please dive in.
Sure. Should I go first again, or should she go first this time?
Oh boy. What was inspired to you?
You go ahead. You go ahead. Lead away.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Really, what a thoughtful, joyful, empathetic conversation, the questions and everyone's participation. And it really is a joy to be doing this. And I think at the end of the day, we really need results. We really just need to deliver the results all the way to on the ground. And we haven't seen that. We have not seen that from this governor. And, ideas are great, but at the end of the day, you've got to understand how they're going to go all the way through to the ground. And that's what we did. That's what we did. We didn't just pass a bill with childcare. We built a pipeline of early childhood educators. We built an infrastructure. We readied the system for the investment. We understood, the trade-offs. And we had a conversation where, people felt compelled to be a part of it because it felt like we were going to do something real and something that was, again, bigger than just the individual. And so that's, I've got that track record of delivering the result all the way through. And that's what we have to do now in Vermont. We have to prioritize. We have to set targets. We have to set metrics. And we have to have the patience to stay together through these multi-year plans that are going to actually bend the cost curve and make the systemic change. So one thing I've been seeing quite a bit is a little bit of us versus them creeping into our dialogues in Vermont. Chittenden County versus rural, rich versus poor, business versus citizen, I guess. I don't really understand that one at all, but I'm seeing it. And it's really striking as we're out there talking to Vermonters traversing the state. There is no us versus them here, folks. It's just us. 645,000 people. It's just us. We hold the key to community, to supporting each other, to supporting our neighbors. And that's really what we've got right now when it feels so powerless with the world on fire around us, with the systems rigged. We really have the key here in Vermont to move to all the way through to the result, a better, brighter future. So let's build Vermont together, folks. Can't wait to do it. Thank you.
Great. So I decided to run for governor, not because I necessarily wanted the position, to be honest. I would say, we are in a moment where things are bad. And I think they're going to get worse. So it's definitely not for the glory, I would say. It's really because I truly believe the choices we make now are going to determine the course of history. And I believe that this is the moment where we need states to stand up and to fulfill our promise of being both a bulwark against authoritarianism and a living laboratory of democracy, to show that a more participatory and equitable and thriving future is possible, and to have the courage, because we know we've got a neighbor who's looking out for us right now, to be able to stand by our values and to push back in this moment of increasing authoritarianism, inequality, and insecurity. And so for me, when I decided to run, there were 3 core values that I really centered. The first was to really advance a bold, transformative, and hopeful vision for the future of Vermont, one where everybody is genuinely safe and secure, and that we are aligned and able to enjoy the things we love most in this state, our communities and our natural beauty. The second was to focus on emphasizing the relational over the transactional, because this is an opportunity to bring people together, to foster greater community, and to support more statewide and organizing infrastructure. And so I'm so grateful for, the nearly 800 volunteers we've had now. We're organizing all across the state. Of this 252 endorsement strategy we're taking of trying to get an endorsement from every town in Vermont. We've already got over 400 endorsements. And, the last one was about fun and culture building, and recognizing in this moment, we need to bring together as many people as possible to do more call in and less call out, so that we can make this movement for justice irresistible. And so I hope that you will get involved if you're interested. And remember, August 11th is the primary. Thanks.
Let's give both of these candidates a big round of applause. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you to MJ from Town Meeting TV and to Jonathan and Chris, who've been keeping things going in the back. Thank you all for coming. Oh, Representative Krasnow.
I'd like I just you just mentioned August 11th, but I just want to remind folks to make sure you come out for the primary. As someone who knocks a lot of local doors, a lot of people are like, an election now? They feel like they just voted. So it's really important. There's a lot of races up and down the ticket, which is really exciting. And so, you know, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, request an early ballot, but let's make sure that we have good numbers at the primary. And also, you may notice our lovely pictures on the screen. But there's also a donation. And so putting on events like this would not be possible without contributions to our Democratic committee, and they help fund our local elections. And so, you know, whether $5, $10, if you want to throw our way so that we can continue to do these forums, would be great. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all. Have a good evening.